Okay, in this demo, I'll be showing you end-to-end network automation using DevOps tools. Basically, we have written our Ansible playbooks, if you watch my other video, and now what we're gonna do is use version control our data file. So as soon as we change the data file, it should automatically run our Ansible playbook. So here's our atom. Here's where we're gonna be changing our data file. And the data file we're going to be changing is the VLAN list file. This is where we maintain all the VLANs that needs to be present in all the switches, right? So once we will change our or add or delete the VLANs from the VLAN list, we will save it and it will get pushed to our GitLab. And once it's over there, we can do peer reviews and all other things. But what GitLab has got a webhook. Remember, we configured webhook, so it's a webhook, and it will send as soon as things change on the GitLab. It will notify our Jenkins server. It will say, Jenkins, hey, something has changed on that repository. You go run a new job. So Jenkins will run that job. So when it runs the job, it will pull the new repository or the what updated repository changes things have happened in that repository, and once it gets the new repository, it will run the Ansible playbook. And once it runs the Ansible playbook, it will start configuring our NXA 9K, right, NXOS. And once it's done with the NXOS configuration, we should be able to see all the VLANs configured there. And it will also send me a Spark message on my Spark room saying, hey, it has successfully deployed all the VLANs. So this is the general concept over which will be this next demo is all about. So let's look into the demo setup. So here's my setup. So inside my laptop, I have a VirtualBox again, and then I have a VM that is running Docker, and inside the Docker, I'm running two containers. One is Jenkins, and also have Ansible installed in it. Another one is GitLab. That's our Get server. And then we again have our virtual switch out there. And then we have our Atom, and we're gonna be changing all the VLAN list on our using Atom. And then we using get push will push it to the GitLab. GitLab will use a webhook to tell the Jenkins server something has changed. Jenkins will pull the new version of our repository, will run our Ansible playbook, and using NX API it will configure our switch. We'll go through our CLI and verify our configuration. Alright, okay, let's look at our file that we need to be changing. So here's my VLAN list file. Okay, and this is what we will be changing. But before we change things, let's look at our configuration of our Jenkins. So here's our Jenkins, and here's our job. So if you look at how it is configured, it says pull the repository, the code from my GitLab server, and this is the repository name, ansible.get. And after you get it, you run this Ansible playbook, which is example VLAN example 3 against this host out here. And once you build this run this playbook successfully, send me a notification on my Spark room and telling me whether it was successful or not. Alright, so that's the configuration of the Jenkins server, and here's the configuration of my repository on the Get. So in the Get, what you need to tell the Get server, so this is my repository Ansible, and in its configuration file you configure webhook, and the webhook says as soon as I get a push event, that means somebody has pushed a new version of the code on me, I need to notify via webhook to this IP address and let the Jenkins server know that something has changed, and Jenkins will then run that particular job, which is it will run this job they call Ansible job. Okay, so let's leave it over here, and let's leave it over here, and we see the last job it ran was job number 27. So now we're gonna go back into our before we go back into our Ansible playbook, let's make sure that we do not have any VLANs configured here. Run VLAN. So there's no VLANs over here. We want to configure VLAN 100, 200, 300 and 500 here, and it's gonna run this playbook over here, and this is how it's gonna do it. It's gonna take all the VLANs from VLAN list, which is coming from here, VLAN list, and then it's gonna go save the configuration. So this time we're not gonna do it manually, we're gonna do it automatically through Jenkins. So in the Jenkins, there's two ways of doing it. You can run the Jenkins job manually, which we're gonna do it now, and then you can also use webhooks to call the job through webhooks from the get. So let's run this job manually. So here, as he said, it started by GitLab. This time it won't be started by let get. We are running manually here. So let's run it now. And if I click on this, and if I click on the console output, I will see what Jenkins is doing at this moment. So basically it's pulling all the repository down, and now it started configuring all the VLANs here. If I go back to my switch, show run VLAN, you'll see all the VLANs started configuring here. So once it's all configured, it's going to save it. Okay, and then it's sending me a message on my Spark room. If I look at my Spark room, I should see a message came here, successfully deployed. Okay, so now that was a manual way of running the job. As I said, in DevOps, you don't do it manually, you let it do it by automation, right? So this way we're gonna in this scenario we're gonna use webhooks to automatically trigger this job. So when you go back here, this job is completed. Now we're gonna go on my playbook, and let's make a change here and say on my VLAN list file, let's add another VLAN and say, hey, we also want to configure VLAN 602, and name will be Jenkins. Alright, all we do is to save this file. Okay, gonna control H save, and this is why I love Atom. Now I can just from the Atom itself push all the configuration to get. So it's a push, and then we can give a meaningful message. Say ticket number 817 added VLAN 602 for Jenkins demo. Okay, and then we save this. See, as soon as we save this file, it automatically gets pushed to the to my Get repository. Okay, so if I go back to my Get repository to my Jenkins server now, and you'll see that the job got triggered by the webhook from the GitLab. So now she automatically triggered and it's doing this thing. So I pushed it to GitLab and it's automatically now it's all done. So if you look at my console output, see what happened. See, this was already done. Only thing it changed was on the last VLAN 602, and it also sent me a successful message. So let's look at our file here. Show run VLAN. So you see 602 is available now here automatically. I did not do any manual configuration. All I did was updated that file. And if I looked at my Spark message, you see the Spark message also told me that it was successfully deployed. So to recap, all I did was change this file, right? I changed this file, I made a copy of it. I said, hey, I want an additional VLAN called VLAN 701 and Jenkins example say 1, right? All I did, and I saved this file, and when I'm saving this file, it's actually pushing it to GitLab. And once get pushed to the GitLab, the GitLab notifies Jenkins via webhook telling it something has changed. And then Jenkins pulls that file. Again, Jenkins pulls the new repository file and then runs the playbook. And once it runs the playbook, it configures the new VLANs there. So all I had to do is to change this file up here and save it. As soon as I saved, everything is automatically done. That's the power of DevOps and automation. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show you in this demo. I have got multiple other demos on my YouTube channel, so take a look and send me an email if you need help with anything.